To order the Winona County Community Health Board. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from March 28th, 2023.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the meeting minutes from March 28th, 2023. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. All right. Item 3, chairperson's report. The Shack group is having a retreat or a meeting, and that is scheduled in all scenic places as Wilmer in September. I want to check. Yeah, September 28th and 29th. And so I do plan on attending that. Public health is trying to figure out what public health is and how it changes and how it moves into the new era of health. I thought, just a sidelight as far as chairperson's report, I thought it was interesting that Mayo, our big healthcare provider in Southeast Minnesota, the legislature was trying to tell them how to staff their organization, and Mayo said, no, you're not going to tell us how to do that. And they now have announced a $4 billion expansion project in the Rochester campus. Now, what that's going to include, I didn't read any details, but that's a huge expansion for Southeast Minnesota. But it does somewhat, it helps us and it hurts us because there's a huge employer that takes some of our potential, employees away. So it's good and it's bad. But I think it'll be ultimately a good
proton beam thing.
thing. Pardon me?
They're doing a proton beam addition up there.
And that's to do more
I think it's probably cancer research.
internal, proton, shooting protons and things like that. Yeah, a lot of research, a lot of expanded research. So again, it's good and it's bad. All right. Does anybody else have anything in the world of health?
I'm going to go to the,
Wilmer?
thinking
Okay.
of Wilmer too.
All right. And, okay, moving on to item number 4, consent business. We have some approvals of 4.1 is to approve Minnesota Department Community Health Board Grant Project Agreement for temporary aid to needy family home visiting and teen pregnancy prevention. 4.2, we have approved Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board Amendment number 4 for Grant Project Agreement 162133 to provide supplemental funding for public health emergency preparedness response. And 4.3 is approved resolution naming agents of the Community Health Board.
I would move to approve the consent business.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the consent business. Any discussion? I see Melanie's do you have any concerns or issues with any of the consent items? Being that you'll be the person we're putting in charge?
I do not.
You do
Thank
not?
you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Thank you, Melanie, for taking on some additional responsibilities. General business, 5.1, St. Charles Ambulance Town Hall meeting, June 29th. I did not attend. I don't know.
I didn't go, I was out of town. So
Yeah, I don't know
either.
why that's on there. Melanie, can you fill us in?
I mean, we had that meeting previous to that
Yeah.
at Lewiston about the ambulance, but
Yeah, so it was a follow-up regarding the Lewiston ambulance decision.
Oh,
It's required if we're going to lose an EMS service within our jurisdiction that they notify us. And that was a possibility that the Lewiston EMS ambulance could be terminated for their licensure. And right now, St. Charles was the interim holder of that. I was also unable to go to was it June 29th
it says
meeting?
June 29th.
So I don't know what was discussed or if anything was resolved.
Okay.
probably get an update from Ben. I'm sure Ben Klinger,
Yeah,
our emergency
Melanie,
manager. I'm
could
sure
you help
he's
us find out what happened?
Yeah, is there anything that
Could
we
you shoot
need?
us an email, summary of what happened?
there.
Yes, I
Unless Sheriff
can.
Andrew knows
Rob,
what's going on with the ambulance in Lewiston.
Lewiston?
do you know what's happening?
As far as I know, they're still covering, but Lewiston Ambulance is covering St. Charles. St. Charles has very limited staff yet. They did have class and brought a few more people on, but still not enough coverage.
Okay,
Okay, so Lewiston is covering St. Charles.
Yes.
It's covering St.
St.
Charles.
Charles.
Yep.
Okay,
I couldn't give you a percentage, but some of the time.
Yeah.
The way I understood it, St. Charles has two ambulances. They took one over to
Off.
Lewiston and they're running it.
right. Is there, I guess the question being that St. Charles is so close to the Olmsted County line, is there any mutual aid between the next service in Olmsted County? Or does Lewiston have to cover everything?
Lewiston's closer.
And it-
Fastest
close.
response.
and it
Okay,
was my understanding they
Go
tried
over
to
Yoda.
get Mayo to take it over and Mayo said no.
no, okay.
you guys find out and just
Yeah.
shoot us a summary.
Yes, I can.
I know I was encouraged. Homer had a night out, and Homer is covered by Pickwick and mutual aid. And actually, the Homer and the Pickwick people are up on numbers. They've gained a few
Great.
people, which is outstanding. But always in need of more volunteers. And you know, and people don't understand the commitment these volunteers make, the number of hours of training and being available, you know, for their communities and stuff. And I really think we need to push at a higher level of funding for some type of compensation, because they're taking a lot of time out of their private lives to do this for communities. And I'll go back to Governor Walz. He says, one Minnesota. Well, we shouldn't be, our healthcare and emergency response shouldn't be controlled by our zip code. We should all have those services
Funded
available
by bake
to us.
sales.
Yeah, and apple pies and chili feeds and pancake. How many pancakes can you eat to buy an ambulance? Or even and there was very good being, you know, I'm filling time. Homer had one of the new Lucas devices. That's the automatic chest compression. And they'd waited, I think, almost a year to get that. But they finally have one. And I think most of our services have those. It's a $20,000, machine that if you're having heart, they'll stick you in there and it automatically does the chest compressions. And, luckily they got grant, and I think we helped them with some ARPA money to get some of that. But yeah, those things are, $20,000, one piece of equipment. And then they had new defibrillators. Again, they were back ordered. He was telling me, Adam Zimmerman is very passionate about they used to have a very large lithium battery, and the batteries were getting harder and harder to get. Now they can operate it on, I think it's AA's. So it's, much more accessible, less expensive, and they can make sure that they're working versus having a very expensive lithium battery sit on the shelf and not knowing if it's gonna work. And they even had, they were showing the little lights that they use in traffic control, being that we're on 61 there, of how they can send out the signal, and it's so much more intense than what they, the old idea of using flares and matches and making things light and such. Now they can just put these lights out and it's very effective. So their equipment is greatly enhanced, but it also comes with a price tag and stuff. But they are doing good
So
job.
I'm hoping we are getting what, $860,000 one-time public safety money this year. And I know it cannot be spent on the jail,
Right.
but it could be spent on radios, because I know we have a great need with armor radios, and that wasn't funded. But
Right.
I'm wondering, I'm looking at you, Sheriff Gandry, because I know that you and your department have say over what we choose, but maybe some of it can go for help with our first responders.
Okay. All right. Any other business to come before the public health? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Bagley to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
We start our meetings with a public comment period. So anyone here in the audience is welcome to step up to the podium. Tell us your name and address, please, for our records. And you try to limit your comments to 2 minutes. So if anyone here in the audience would like to participate in public comment, please do so now.
Morning. Jeff Suckamel, 4305 Woods Way, Minnetonka, Minnesota. Just a couple comments on the Nonheim Cup. Some of you may remember, we were here in 2021 for this issue and it was denied. And the reason being was the view shed issue. We had data, but my mistake, I didn't get it to the initial cup. So we needed to refile, wait a year and come back again. So we have the data. It's in your brochures. And both the Planning Commission and us petitioners now agree that the view shed no longer will be an issue. The second item is a recent concern is the erosion of the potential build site up in the meadow. And we've done some work in that regard as well. Planning Commissioner Eric and myself, not together, but we've been up there on separate occasions and walked the meadow and found no indication. There was no scored earth. There's no ruts anywhere. And we saw zero erosion in the meadow. Now, I'm not a hydrologist, but what we did see is 200 yards on each side of the meadow are unplowed, appear to be drainage areas. So I think the water is draining around the meadow. And the last thing would be, why do we want to build within 300 feet instead of not need a cup and go 300 feet back? And the reason for that was to save farmland. There's 100 yards worth of farmland that we would save if we can build in the meadow. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's anyone here in the audience that would like to participate in public comment, please step forward. In addition to that, individuals who are participating over the internet are welcome to share in our public comment period.
He had his hand up.
You do not need to raise your hand. All you need to do is step forward to the microphone.
Come ahead.
Please tell us your name and address for our records.
Hi, I'm Pat Prodzinski, 22054 Government Point Road. We're here, Rita and I are here in support of the CUP. And, you know, I've walked that land several times. I cut wood back there, take my dogs back there. What he's saying is exactly right. There is no erosion in that meadow. And it would be nice to save the farmland. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there's anyone else either attending on Ring Central or here in our audience that would like to participate in public comment, please step forward to the mic.
Good morning. I'm Ross Dunsmore, Environmental Service Supervisor. Just want to take the opportunity to introduce you to Casey Reynolds. She has assumed Dan Morse's duty as an environmental planner. Just want to take that opportunity to introduce you.
Welcome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, nice to meet you. Happy to be here.
Glad you're here. Yes, It's been empty for a long time.
And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your experiences or why you're here.
Definitely. So I first came down to the area to attend college at WSU, so I'm an alum. I graduated during the pandemic, so that threw a big kink in the plans and ended up staying here. And now my husband and I have bought in a house. My previous position was with St. Mary's. I do have a background in chemistry, but I've always had a passion for the more environmental side. So I'm excited to get some boots on the ground and get going.
Fabulous.
Yes, lovely to meet you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having interest in solid waste. Is there anyone else in the audience or participating over Ring Central that would like to participate in public comment? And for the final time, is there anyone here in the audience or participating over the internet that would like to participate in public comment? Hearing no one, public comment is closed and we move on. The next item of business would be to approve some prior county board minutes.
I'll move to approve the July 25th minutes.
A second.
Okay, Commissioner Vagley has moved, Commissioner Ward has seconded approval of county board minutes from July 25th of 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Next item is to acknowledge some committee minutes.
I will acknowledge the Winona County Planning Commission, June 15th. It did say I was absent and that the problem was that technology
were there,
I
weren't
was listening,
Yeah.
but I didn't partake, so I technically was absent.
You were there on the internet.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Ward has moved, Commissioner Vagley has seconded. Approval of the Planning Commission minutes from June 15th of 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. The next item is consent comments and approval of the agenda as it was presented to us in our packet. Commissioner Ward,
I just have a comment, announcement at the end, please.
Commissioner Olson,
Poll 7.1.
okay. So I am going to make 7.1, 8.3. And that's it. Commissioner Vagley,
Comment at the end, please.
and nothing for me. County Attorney's not here. Administrator Holte, anything from you?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. So there are some adjustments to our agenda, and the next item would be to approve the agenda as it was amended, potentially.
I'll move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Vagley has moved and Commissioner Olson has seconded approval of the amended agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. If anyone's opposed, say nay. Agenda is approved. Administrator Holte, could you read the consent business into the record?
Absolutely. 7.2, approve outside agency funding policy. 7.3, approve Winona County Board Chair recommendation for Human Rights Commission applicant. 7.4, approve contract with Bold Planning to review and update emergency plans. Oh, I'm sorry, I omitted to say that 7.1 was bold.
Yeah.
My apologies. 7.5, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board Grant Project Agreement for temporary aid to needy families, home visiting and teen pregnancy prevention. 7.6, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board Amendment 4, Grant Agreement 162133 for supplemental funding for public health emergency preparedness and response. 7.7, accept DNR outdoor recreation grant for Apple Blossom Park. 7.8, approve renewal agreement with DebtBook. And 7.9, confirm payment of disbursement.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve the consent items.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Vagley has moved, Commissioner Olson has seconded approval of the consent business as it was read into the record. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, say nay. Consent business is approved. So we move on now to item 8.1, which is to receive the Recorder's Office mid-year update. Mr. Bambanek.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. There's one additional handout. I was asked about the vitals numbers after the agenda was prepared, so it's kind of a handout and pass those around. Also have one for anyone from the public that's real estate activity. We could just pass this around. And then we also have the
Morning.
vitals numbers. Madam Chair, those items are in the agenda, but if we have some folks that are visiting and wanted them to have the benefit of the information we're presenting. For starters, 2023 has been very challenging. There are a lot of folks that are looking for a home in Winona County, and there just has not been very much available. We are down 30% in home sales. At a recent regional meeting, many of the counties there said they were down 50% and they would absolutely love to change places with us. So even though we're down, we're still very positive in the region. Okay, for the first 6 months, and now this morning I added July, we've had 432 sales a year ago, and our current number this morning is 303. So that's the 30%. The price range with the most sales has been 150,000 to 200,000. And that's been holding pretty steady for the last 3 years. Prior to that, it was 100 to 150,000. There were 30 that were over 400,000, the most expensive being 629,000 for home in Goodview. So just letting you know that there's interest in all price ranges and there's activity. There's parties that are wanting to buy. Bid offs continue. But what's happening in Winona County that is the envy of the country is that our bidders all seem to have a top line and they're not going considerable distances beyond that. If they did, that is going to cause a value increase for all of the Winona County properties unless we can discount the sales. So we're doing very well. The bidding has been very conservative. We had 5 timber sales so far in 23, just north of Minnesota City. There was 5,600 an acre paid for 205 acres. That was the high, and then there was a range of prices under that. We've had 39 commercial sales in a whole variety of different commercial properties, 17 apartment buildings, 8 retail establishments, 4 restaurants, 9 general office manufacturing. Just made that listing for you to again show the demand and the interest in any property that becomes available. The prices certainly up, but they're not up to a level where it is beyond reasonable for an increase. All right, a couple of commercial sales that have drawn a lot of interest. I told you about this one earlier this year. The car wash on Frontenac Drive along the area where Walmart is. It sold for $6,304,000. And when that came in, we were a little bit taken back. You know, a car wash, even the most modern and the best technology and up to date, $6 million. Well, it took us a couple of weeks, but we found out it has the electric plug-ins for vehicles and it is in full operation. And so you might say that in this whole part of the country, there's certainly among the firms that's kind of leading the way.
So what's
The other
car
part-
wash cost? What are they
Yeah.
charging?
So, yeah, that might be something for you to check out. The other part of that is that we know more and got that sale, and Walmart nationally came out with an announcement that they're going to be doing the electric plug-in. So we'll see how those two interface, but certainly the car wash was out front.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I never see anyone getting their car washed.
Car wash there?
Okay, well, the business is still going good. All right, 2 commercial sales drawing a lot of interest. The Lamberton home on House Street sold for $1,850,000. It is an historic place. It is on the National Register. The other sale that's drawn a lot of interest, the Choate Building downtown Winona, sold for $2,870,000. It is both a retail and office location. During April, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, which goes through Winona, merged with Kansas City Southern. The combined land stretches from the Canadian border to the Mexican border, but the lines go deep into those countries as well. It is the only railroad in the United States that goes from the north border to the south border. All right, then it's fair to say that as 23 continues, we're having a lot of activity, especially with data increase, the numbers of requests that we're getting, parties looking and talking to people on their own about buying their properties. Just a lot of activity and certainly a much higher number than what the sales would indicate. All right, there's another sheet in the towards the end of our handout. We were asked during the equalization meeting about current pricing. Our mean today is $234,000. So if you're buying an average home in Winona County and you're a first-time home buyer, this could be a somewhat challenging and daunting number. The Minnesota legislature did take it up. The programs are still being developed and the details proven out by Minnesota Housing and several other state agencies. So when we have those, the county through planning department, through the housing committee, all wanting to look at some of that information very closely. Our median has gone up a little bit from 195 to 215. That increases is, I think, in proportion to what we've seen in the sales, and I don't think it's, is out of line for our area. If you are in the west part of the Twin Cities, certainly it's much higher. All right, the vitals numbers, we've been going for some time with deaths about 2 to 1 over the births. But what I want to say about this is that these are births at largely Winona Community Memorial Hospital. There are births at Winona. They are Winona residents that have a child at Gunderson and La Crosse, and also at the facilities in Rochester. And so for our total, those have to be added in. And at year end, we do that for the school districts and for the other locations. There's many businesses, many schools that these numbers are really needed for planning. So we work with all of them. The state provides that final number to us.
So I'm sorry, Bob, at the end of the year,
Yes,
you'll have Winona residents born in La Crosse or Rochester.
yes, in addition to the Winona County number.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. During our legislative update, we just had a few brief minutes, so I just want to repeat this for everyone. There is assistance to taxpayers, homeowners, and also renters. There is a one-time rebate fee from the state of Minnesota that will be coming out shortly. It's about $260 per person. There's also going to be the annual credit and renters refunds. Not only will they be coming out, but there's going to be a 13.8% increase, and that's for the ones that are actually being mailed out in 2023. I want to say one thing about the $260 payment that's coming out. There's no application process. You do not need to apply. If you paid taxes in Minnesota in 2021, I don't want to go back to 2021, you should be receiving it at the end of the year. If you've not, contact the Minnesota Department of Revenue. We also have some really good news coming up for 24 and 25. The exclusion of value that you pay your homestead taxes on is going to be going up. That's not the taxes going up, it's just the opposite. The more that exclusion value goes up, the less you should be paying in taxes, or ultimately holding your line close to what you're paying at the present time. If it were the exclusion that we've had for the last 11 years, it wouldn't help us a whole lot. But the legislature added 25%, and that definitely will. It won't be on the tax statements until 25. The values, according to the legislation that we just received, it will be values from 24. They'll be factored in, and that larger exclusion amount will be in 25. When you look at your tax statement, you see two numbers. You see an estimated market value, and then you see a taxable market value. That's what you're paying your taxes on, the taxable. And there is a chart that we had passed out that was put together at the legislative meeting. So with the time crunch we had that night and the questions that remained after the meeting, I just wanted to follow up on this. And then see if we have one other item here. I think we've covered it all. Any questions?
I have a couple,
Kim?
Bob. I'm concerned about, our rural land sales, and I see a lot of land, and it tends to be small little parcels that's going up into the 5-digit figure per acre. I look at the per acre. Is there any consideration if that land is actually going into, production, that the owner is actually, farming it, or because you throw out high sales. I know, you're allowed to throw out high sales. I think some of the high sales tend to be people that are, buying a small acreage and they're just going to live there and they're going to grow, flowers and trees and such. And it's not truly used for production. So is there a discriminating factor that you can exclude some of those very high sales?
Yes, there is. They would be largely for a residence, and that the assessor is working very, very closely on that. We also have additional people in the assessor's office that are doing inspections of properties.
Okay. And then the other thing that we all, if you own anything, our home insurance policies. And personally, we noted that the value that our insurers put on our home is astronomically higher than our tax, estimated market value. So does the insurance, can we influence the insurance industry at all? Because I think most homeowners would realize, I think ours went up like 25%, and it's every year. And then you have to call them. And luckily my husband is willing to fight and work it back down to a reasonable figure. And we're higher risk takers than some other people would be, but that's our decision. But it seems like the insurance industry, the value of these homes, they've got them at top dollar. Do they ever look at our tax figures?
They should be. They're available to them, and
but-
when they're working with you, I'm pretty sure they have that information.
Yeah, they should have it.
And
And
I
so
would-
maybe in your state association, it may be an issue that, we could get some discussion on. Of course, I don't want you to raise up my value.
For all homeowners, if you see this, please get a copy of your county tax statement with the value on it. And if you need additional documentation, it's available from the assessor's office, certainly available from a number of county sites as well. And talk with your agent.
Yeah.
And that's I see that as one of the benefits for doing your insurance locally. If you're, doing something on a national level, you'll have to deal with the parties.
You get in the phone chain and everything. But I urge people to look at that, because that's a major expense in owning a home, is the insurance that you carry on it.
You brought up one thing about some of the prices. I didn't mention all of the information that we have, but we certainly should mention the high on tillable land. There was a sale that took place near Bethany, and it did set a new record for the county when tillable land, 107 acres, sold for $13,137 per acre. Corn and soybeans for the last few days have been dropping on the worldwide market. That's a huge concern. And in Minnesota, our crop report it's fairly good for our immediate area. But as you travel towards South Dakota, there are a lot of very weak areas because the rain was so sporadic. So we're looking at something many people think is less than an average crop. Our prices are down, but yet we're having record prices for land. Some of it is investment groups, but we've not seen that in Winona County. But I want to share one thing that enters into this, and people ask questions about it a lot. About a year and a half ago, we had a party that moved here from Los Angeles. And I got to know the party because he was looking for a home in Winona and he was having no easy time. And he was checking back with us and talking to a number of realtors. I talked to him, I said, Los Angeles, I just have prices of real estate there, way out in the middle of the ocean. I said, would you talk to me, or would you, share a few thoughts with me about your property and, what kind of price you sold it for and coming here? Well, he didn't come out and tell me what he sold it for, but he said that his value on his property was just over $1 million. And he said that was the lowest on the block. He didn't tell me what the block was, but I got an impression from him that there probably was a little bit owed on the mortgage. So he was paid over $1 million for the property. I misstated that just a minute ago. And I'm looking at this and thinking that, let's just say he had a third for a mortgage. That's giving him $600,000 to come to Winona. And you know what? He ended up buying a home for $300,000. He was absolutely thrilled, just thrilled. He said it was everything that he wanted, compared to over $1 million in Los Angeles. So there's a $300,000 balance there. This has been repeated many times in Winona County during the last few years. People that are coming from almost any other bigger metropolitan area of the United States can come here and they can get a really good buy for their money. People that are living here or the first time homeowner has to compete with that. So that's where you hear, the price was so high, I couldn't touch it. But yet for the party that came here, in the value of his home. It was a significant downturn, but that's part of the market.
Who got the benefit of the capital gains, the state of California or the state of Minnesota?
Marcia, I'm going to leave that up to you.
Somebody got a benefit.
Commissioner Ridgely has a question.
That $13,100 per acre for tillable, that's an outlier. That's almost twice as high, isn't it, at what other tillable land goes for? That's a rare instance. Isn't it?
If you look down the list, they're creeping up there.
We had, we
Yes.
were at 10.5 for a while on high, and we just had almost 200 pretty good tillable acres sell for 10,000 an acre. And we do have some other sales that are pending that are going to be mixed land, and there's also buildings included. So that gets to be a little bit more challenging for determining those values. And the assessor puts a lot of time in on that. When we get a sale that's all tillable land and a very, very high percentage of it, in this case, almost 100% comes in at this price, that's what Department of Revenue says we have to have to set our value on tillable land. So it plays a part. It was being looked into by the assessor, and John does an outstanding job of working with revenue and discounting sales that are out of the range that we would expect them. And if there's some uniqueness about it, and it's an area that Department of Revenue recognizes, we've been successful in getting some taken out of the group. So we didn't have to include those in determining our values for taxes.
Is look at the bottom of the page, that 15, but that does, the nice thing it does in Bob's chart, I appreciate it, does say land only residential.
Right.
That was one of my concerns.
It's very concerning in terms of what real farmers can have to pay
Right.
versus the investment groups or the Chicago or Minneapolis hunters or whatever. Yeah, this is very concerning in terms of keeping real farmers on the land.
It is, and we've not, during the 1980s, we had foreclosures. We had a very challenging time. We did have a significant number of mortgage lenders that did become landowners, and some of them for an extended period of time. What I'm going to say is they had the ability to wait out the downside, and when the prices were right, they sold. We're not seeing that at present. We're not having significant numbers of investment groups. One other thing that, while we're on this topic, in Minnesota, foreign entities cannot own real estate, tracts of real estate. But that's not the story of the country as a whole. And it's unfortunate. This is something the federal government should pick up on. There is foreign interests owning some very valuable pieces of land from one coast to the other. But in Minnesota, we have statute that doesn't provide for that. We watch that very closely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for all the time this morning. And the legislative meeting that you had a week ago was just excellent. But I had a little bit of a hard time trying to get 15 to 9. So I had to just follow up with a couple of the questions this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item is to receive our monthly finance and budget update. Mr. Moga.
I'll be providing a finance update on May. May numbers in the revenue fund start out at $11 million. Actual revenues are $1 million. Expenses are $1.5 million. Ending cash is $10.5 million. For the whole year in the general fund, cash started out as $15.5 million. Actual revenues are $3.5 million. Actual expenses were $8.6, $10.5 million for the ending balance. In the revenue fund, the variance is a negative $5 million to compare to a negative 5.6 for last year. And if you look at all the funds that are being presented, it was an 8.1 million negative compared to a negative 8.5 million. And I will point out that Human Services is in the negative at this point. Next month, you'll see that these numbers will change drastically because June will be presented because we'll be having the June taxes posted. Any question on this document? No. Then we'll go to summary. Summary cash starts out at 19.6. Actual summary of revenues are 9.7. Actual revenues are 17.7. Actual revenues are 11.6. Variance is the 8 million compared to the 8.5 million. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. Summary budget, we're through May, we're 42% of the way through the year. Looking at the expenses, the only one that is really at the present time that's over that is highway, but highway is always that fluctuation, and this is, we're in the building season right now. So nothing that is standing out at this point. Again, the revenues will change on the next budget update. Any questions on this? If not, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next item is 8.3, which was previously 7.1, which is potentially approve the conditional use permit for Roseanne and Keith Nunheim. Commissioner Olson, you pulled it. Would you like to start the conversation?
Yeah, we received an email that they wanted to table this decision and postpone it for our next meeting.
Okay.
I'm just curious where we're at with that.
Commissioners, Alex Bowman, our Assistant County Attorney, has been working on the land use issues since Ms. Nuttall left for Oregon. But Alex is working with Stephanie, so he's prepared to address this as far as what this means kind of from the administrative point of view and also legal issues, deadlines, things like that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So I would just note, I'm referencing an email chain that looks like you guys have received as well. The petitioners contacted the Planning Environmental Services Department on August 2nd, and they actually were requesting to have consideration of this potentially tabled or postponed until a later date. They actually wanted to wait until the other commissioner seat was filled, which the election's happening today, because basically the issue that could run into with a 4-person board, it's more likely that there would be a tie, which would in effect be a denial because there would not be a majority to pass the motion. How that plays with our ordinance, it is allowable for you guys to table it. The requirement under our ordinance is that you guys have to take action on the petition within 14 days of receiving a recommendation from the Planning Commission. However, the ordinance states that the actual deadline for approving or denying is Minnesota Statute 1599, which is the 60-day rule. We still have time in the initial 60 days until next week. The county can unilaterally issue a 60-day extension letter to go to 120, and then we can go beyond 120 days with the permission of the petitioners, which in this case, it seems that they would agree to that. So I would advise that Winona County's zoning ordinance 5.5.4.6 is the requirement you take action today. It's really as the board, as the final decision maker, it's your decision if you want to table it until a future date, that would be taking action, or you could move ahead with hearing this matter today. But that would be the answer to Commissioner Olson's question about their request for an extension. Any further questions?
Commissioner Bagley.
If I understand it correctly, the 60 days is primarily for the benefit of the petitioner.
Yes.
It's not, it's to get it done and addressed in a timely manner. So it doesn't go on for years. So if the petitioner asks for it, that seems to take the onus off of the county to expedite it, right? Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, so the 1599 is the requirement in statute that if the county or the decision maker doesn't make a decision within 60 days, it's an automatic approval. We're still within the initial 60-day period. The requirement to go another 60 days is just for the county to issue a letter, a certified letter to the petitioner. And then to go even further beyond 120, we can do it with their consent, which appears they'd be open to that. But we're still good on the initial 60, but it's up to you. If you direct us to issue that letter today, we can extend, or if you guys want to proceed, that's your decision.
And one other point of clarification is we have an election today. When will that person be fully a voting member of the Winona County Board?
I believe there's a certification of that
Friday.
scheduled.
Yeah, that's Friday. And the meeting
It's on
to
my
certify the
calendar,
election.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Friday.
so
When
they could
does
take the
swearing
oath
in-
and be sworn in on as early as Friday,
And be here for the
August.
August
Okay,
22nd.
okay, so we're well within the timeframes and everything. Okay, all right. Well, I will move to table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Question before we discuss tabling, can we discuss it at all, or would you rather just table it all together? And because we have staff here, we have some county residents here, do you want to like discuss anything and then possibly table it?
Well, I
We
would
could
like to,
discuss it and then table it, or does the beginning to discuss it lock us into making a decision?
I'm sorry, I didn't, is there, you made a motion to
To
table?
table.
Okay. Is there
and
a
then you
second?
don't do discuss, not yet.
I will second that.
Okay,
Okay.
so, right, then it goes off the table. There isn't any.
It seems to me that if the point is to wait till the fifth
Right,
commissioner is
right.
here, discussing it without that person present does not make sense.
I just thought if we had questions that either the staff could answer between now and the 22nd, we could get those on the record, but we could also, I guess, contact by email or in person as well.
Yes.
And I would
agree.
assume that the planning commission meeting from the last planning commission meeting is probably on YouTube.
Mhm.
Yeah, so perhaps the administrator could send a link and then you
Right.
would be
No,
able to see the staff
I read through-
presentation.
I
and
read through the planning commission minutes, so.
Yeah. Let me tell you,
There
the
was,
recording is always better.
yeah, the meeting minutes are kind of
Yeah, they are. You miss a lot of things. in
Is-
these
is,
minutes, yeah.
minimalized, yeah.
Okay. So Commissioner Ward has moved, Commissioner Meyer has seconded to table the conditional use permit for Roseanne and Keith Nonheim and to ask staff to issue the letter for the 60 days and to consider this then at the next meeting when the fifth commissioner is seated. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Does anyone opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. All right, that is our last item of business before we would move to the committee of the board, but, oh, wait. Commissioner Ward has a comment?
Yes, it is an election day. I wore my election shirt. And you walk up and it says vote here, but unfortunately, we all can't vote today. It's not an election at large. So the District 3 people need to get out and vote. The polls are open until 8 o'clock tonight. So if you're out making hay, take a break. For any of the ag people, take a break and go vote, or any of the city people, please vote. It's all about turnout in these very, special elections. So good luck to both candidates, and we look forward to the results later tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vagley, you had a comment.
Same ditto. Good luck to both candidates, to Mr. Elstein and Mr. Spitzer. It is predominantly a rural district. Parts of the district, though, do touch the edges of Minnesota City and
Oh, it
Goodyear.
has the second largest city in the county, St. Charles.
The edge, and also the edges of like the greater Winona area as well. But yes, St.
Yes.
Charles for sure. Absolutely. So it's not just a rural district.
Right.
So good luck to both candidates. Hopefully there'll be a much higher turnout than during the primary. So that's it.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Olson has moved. Commissioner Vagley has seconded adjournment of the board meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Can we have a 5-minute break?
Please.
I'm going to call to order this committee of the board meeting of the Winona County Board. We have 2 agenda items. The first one is to receive legislative impact updates from the county attorney and the highway engineer. And who wants to go first? Karen's going first. Okay, so the county attorney is going to go first. Okay. And just for reference for folks who are here, a lot happened at the legislative session. And in many cases, I think Winona County's levy and the work that we do depends less on this board and more on what happens at the state than anything else. And so we had asked department heads to summarize for us what happened, what we're expecting, and then really also how that affects us from a monetary perspective. And so we, at our committee of the board meetings, over the course of the summer, different department heads are coming to speak to us. Mr. Bamanek was here talking from the recorder's office at our last meeting.
So commissioners, I'm just going to touch on 3 areas and in brief, because if you want a more comprehensive presentation, I can do that. But I thought, given the time and stuff here, but first, I think of great significance, which this board asked for an initiative, was the local option sales tax to pay for the new jail. And after 2 years of trying, the second year, this last session, we were successful. Unfortunately, there's not a general election, as I think I mentioned before to the board, this fall. And the statute does say the referendum has to be held during a general election. And you've already indicated that you would move to that in 2024. But I just want to let you know that my office, which is kind of, how should I say, shepherding this initiative, has taken the steps to file the local approval certificate after you adopted the second resolution, adopting the first resolution, I mean, all that stuff. And so then the next steps on that will be to prepare the referendum question. So I'll be bringing that to you to look at some options. And again, this is a sales tax. It is not a property tax. And it is 0.025%, basically, I want to say 2.5 cents on the dollar. And Mr. Mogan has indicated that the highway sales tax has generated how much, Pat? Was it again?
I think right around $3.8 million.
3.6
to 3.8.
Okay, and that's twice as much as this one is. So we could expect that half of that every year for the next however long it takes to collect the 28 million plus interest. So that's on its way and moving along. The other 2 ones that I wanted to mention, which as you said, Commissioner Meyer, a lot of things happen at the legislature that we don't either expect or this board didn't ask for. And among those is there was a lot of changes in the criminal law. Some good, some bad, I guess, from my perspective. And one of those changes was to make to automate the expungements of marijuana-related offenses, not felony offenses where a gun was involved, but pretty much everything else. The good news is that none of those expungements have to be handled by my office, so I don't need to ask you for an additional attorney just to handle the expungements, okay? That is going to be handled by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and I had sent you that article in the Tribune, which is very comprehensive and really good on that expungement legislation, that the BCA is going to handle those, and people do not have to apply for that. The BCA is just going to go through the records and start automatically expunging those convictions that qualify. And they won't notify people either of their expungement, so people will have to check on the website for in the court system. Actually, the court website is public and you can look up your case. If you can't find your case, that means it's probably been expunged. So, and then there are quite a few other changes that, like I said, good and bad. I have a comprehensive list. I'm on the board of directors and the executive committee of the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. We've been going through those, but it would take another, couple hours to do that. So I'm not going to do that. But just to know, there's some changes that, as of August 1st, there were some big changes. The other area.
Before you leave that, so are these changes to our benefit? Will we be locking up less people? Will they be diverted from our jails? Or are there going to be more people, in a very general sense, be put in jail?
It depends. There were some changes that I think caught some loopholes that were in the interest of public safety. There's always a push to make changes to the blanking out on it right now, where you have where you have a death of a person who's been hit by a car, and sometimes we can only get a careless on that because we can't prove gross negligence. So that's been an issue that actually we've been, as the County Attorneys Association, pushing. That didn't pass through this year, but that's an example. But there's some felony offenses, some murder offenses too. So it's not going to increase significantly the population in the prison. There was also a change. There was an addition that may help statewide to create an Office of Restorative Justice. But here in Winona County, we should all be proud that we have an excellent restorative justice program that we're trying to get back in the school system. We already talked to Superintendent Brzezinski about that, but and that's worked for 30 years. But the state legislators decided, because there was a push, because other areas of the state didn't have similar programs. So now, though, we have to, as Commissioner Ward, you love talking about the state mandates. I'm waiting to see what kind of mandates are going to come down on us for restorative justice programs. And I hope they leave us alone, because our programs work really well. And on that note, there's since this is committee of the board, right?
So you should patent that, or you should make a franchise out of that, and then we
There's a
should,
program,
and then
right?
we
Yeah,
should
right.
benefit
Well,
from.
there's other
I
places
mean,
that have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Put
that
that
was
on
a
your
change
list.
that, I join in that sense, that too much government is too much government. We didn't need that agency. Similar with the marijuana stuff, there's going to be, they kind of put the cart ahead of the horse on
Yep.
on that.
Mhm.
And they didn't have the structure in place for dealing with all of the fallout of that. And I see Sheriff Ganrud is here. One of the issues is we don't have, there's no such thing as a preliminary breath test for marijuana. So if you're driving under the influence of marijuana, we need to get a drug recognition expert. And I think, Ron, we only have 2, right, in the county? Yeah. So, and some counties have none. So how do you determine? Well, then you have to prove at court that they were under the influence in the general sense that, they were driving, erratically.
So that's a drug recognition?
Drug recognition expert.
Yeah,
And-
But the
and-
officers can be trained to do that. We have that.
So it's no chemical test, it's just
No,
a
they look.
behavioral
look-
eyes?
Blood draw, right?
No,
No?
well, you can do a blood draw, but the problem with marijuana is it stays in your system for a while.
Yeah.
What level is intoxication? So, all the details, work the details out later. Sorry, I'm kind of putting my frustration with a lot of that marijuana laws.
But
And-
not to distract you, August 18th is the golf tournament.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
want you to
okay.
say it.
Right. So speaking of restorative justice, the golf tournament, which is an annual event, County Administrator Holte and I have competing teams. She always wins. Much better golf than my team. But
And that is not paid time when you're out golfing. I mean, I have a little issue with,
right.
okay,
I work
I have a little issue with,
24/7, Commissioner Ward.
I have a little issue with the county promoting golf tournaments.
But
during
for
the
a good
day.
cause,
Being a
though. This is one of
Restorative
their
justice
biggest
is in
fundraisers.
part funded by this golf.
So then they don't have to come to the board. and
Like a
ask for
bake
more
sale.
money.
It's like a big sale.
Right, but yes.
And
but
it brings
still
together
have
the
issues.
community. I mean, there's people from the school district, there's.
Okay, but back
law
to this
enforcement.
drug
Okay, yeah.
recognition expert.
Yeah,
So
I
this
will.
is just, they look at the person and determine
Pretty much, I
through
mean, maybe. Ron, you
physical,
can- If you have, it's.
because it's it's
Looking at
August
signs.
1, it was legal.
Yeah.
So,
And there's
Right.
funding built in to fund some training, the
Some training, but
expensive
minimal.
training, so right.
And
so
there's
what
no
does,
funding
what do they
for
look
treatment.
for as a drug
You're
recognition?
stealing my thunder when I was invited to come in
Oh, well,
in a couple of weeks.
timing.
Yeah.
Please say it again then.
So we have 2 drug recognition experts,
Mhm,
and it's not just for marijuana, it's for all illicit drugs.
mhm.
And they go through an extensive training. And they check more than just your
pupils, your eyes.
Mhm.
You know, they're looking for more than just the watery eyes, the red eyes, slurred speech and that kind of thing. They'll check your pulse and they can tell you that if you're under a stimulant or what kind of drug you're on. But again, we need to have more people trained in that, and there's money from the state coming down. But part of the problem is if we want to send most or a lot of my deputies through it, how do you backfill them to go to school for a week? And then they don't do the drug recognition expert in Minnesota anymore. They send them out of state.
Well, that's an issue, like, okay, so Friday I have an MCIT board meeting. It might be something that as a whole, you know, because we cover all counties, liability wise, we might discuss at least in brief. Okay. So where do they have to go for training? California?
They were going to California. I guess
California.
I'm not sure where they're sending them now.
I think some of the city officers went to Racine, Wisconsin. I'm not sure though. Maybe, maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah,
Wisconsin, it's
we
not-
haven't sent anybody for
It's
quite a while.
not a legal
No, it's not.
activity
It's
in
the island,
Wisconsin.
no.
Doesn't mean they don't do training.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, okay, all right.
But yes, well, this was one of the topics I bring up when I come to address you.
I want to hear it about again.
Sure.
This
Yeah,
is a
you'll have
teaser.
more
All right.
details.
Yeah.
This is a
More
teaser.
details in a couple
continue.
weeks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
I mean, but from my office,
Yeah.
it's frustrating because then we will have additional prosecutions. And marijuana will be more difficult to prove in court.
Mhm.
So, anyways, okay, and the last thing I want to talk about very briefly, and maybe Chelsea Wilbright's going to be presenting this to you. But it affects my office's work because we work closely with Chelsea, particularly during election time. That there were significant changes in both funding, the laws about election administration, protection of election workers, adding some law or actually misdemeanor violations, and significantly that may help clarify some of the, interpretations of the law as to data practices and asking, requesting records as they affect election data. So that was a big change, or at least the legislature looked at that very carefully and came up with, I have a 20-page there.
So more accessibility or more restrictions to getting the data in general
More clarification of what data would be available.
available?
Yeah, and so because there were some ambiguities, and there's still ambiguities in the Data Practices Act for other things too.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, and also some, additional funding for voting operation technology and election resources. So, but I guess is Chelsea going to be talking about that later?
Okay. All right.
I don't know that she signed up.
Okay, but, I can send you, a summary, that the Office of the Secretary of State's office issued. And just to let you know too, that, because of what all of the issues that are around interpretation of election laws and things like that, and what happens during the elections, I had suggested that the Minnesota County Attorneys Association create a election law committee. And then they said, well, do you want to chair it, Karen? And I go, okay, fine. So we're actually making a presentation at our leadership retreat in September to the 87 county attorneys on election, well, basically on this, what happened in the legislature, and how you can work with your auditor, treasurer. In some counties, they're not elected, as you all know. So it's their election official, because that's become much more, I think, increasingly that we work hand in hand with our auditor treasurer. So, and as luck would have it, I don't know if anybody knows, you might know him, maybe you too, Commissioner Begley, the Don Ryan, who's the Crow Wing County attorney, his auditor treasurer, who's no longer an auditor treasurer, I guess she's the election official. Debbie Erickson is the president of the election auditor, treasurer officials. And so she's going to also be presenting at that panel about,
So you can send us that.
I will send, I'll
Okay.
email this to you. Yep, I
All right.
have that. So
Okay.
it's a lot of good reading in there.
We
So.
got a couple years, well, a year and a half before a big.
Thank you for what you do at the state legislature, Ms. Sonneman, and all the things that you do, not just the local option sales tax, but the other initiatives. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And that's all I have. So Dave.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Morning.
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 As you're aware, Winona County is a member of MICA, the Minnesota Inter-County Association. They do some lobbying and they track what's going on at the legislature, and they put together a fairly detailed end of session report rather than reinvent the wheel. I took their report and highlighted some things and added some notes to myself. So that's in your agenda. And then I also just made some photocopies of that and I put those on your table. So you've got that if you want to follow along. So starting on page, what is numbered as 139 in your agenda, the legislature passed some fairly extensive revenue increases for transportation. In the middle of that page, there's a highlighted a laundry list of various things that they approved. You look at the different numbers in here, 1.2 billion, 1.5 billion. I think some of those are over time. Some of those are projected like future per year. The MnDOT state aid staff took what the legislature approved and it took them some time to work through all of that to project out what's our actual revenue that we would expect to see from that. And they provided that a few weeks ago. I've got that kind of in this red piece on the bottom here. So our current county state aid highway funding, which comes from the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, is 6.7 million this year. They're projecting it to increase to 8.5 million in 2027. So, if you just look at that on its face, almost a $2 million increase, that looks like a lot, and it is a lot. What's that?
The mile and a half.
Put it in miles.
Yeah.
It does look like a big number.
It does, and that's a 26.5% increase over that time period. If you look at it a different way, our current CASA revenue has been going up and down. It's actually a little bit less this year than it was 3 years ago. So if we look at the third line that I have here from 2020, our CASA revenue was 6.9 million. So if you look at that 7-year period going from 6.9 to 8.5 as a cumulative increase, that's essentially 3% per year. So that's, tracking roughly probably with inflation in general. However, unfortunately, our construction costs spiked, especially in 2022 and also, a little bit more to this year, roughly 40%. And we don't anticipate that settling back down. And in talking with other counties, that seems to be pretty global. So in spite of this significant revenue increase, we're actually anticipating our ability to construct projects to be reduced from, let's say, what it had been in 2019 or 2020.
And Dave, these numbers in the red box are Winona County, but the CASA funding, that is just what you've got in the red box is just construction dollars.
That's CASA funding. That includes all of the dollars, which 60% is construction, 40% is maintenance.
Okay, so it includes everything.
It includes all of it.
Okay.
All of our CASA funds, and it includes both our, what they call our regular CASA and our municipal CASA, which has slightly different variations to that. But
All right, thank you for that clarity.
so one thing that I mentioned at our previous road and bridge meeting, or I think it was this spring, based on my sense is probably prior to last year, we were kind of holding our own as far as our ability to keep our roads in decent condition to fund projects. With our cost increase, I'm anticipating we're going to have more residents frustrated that their road hasn't been fixed and either isn't going to be fixed in a time frame where that's acceptable to them, or it's maybe not even on our 5-year plan and it's in bad shape. And I'm expecting that to actually get worse in the coming years. There are a few different things that the county board has available and, that are within your power. But anyway, the feedback I got that was to bring it back to the road and bridge when we have the other commissioner chair filled, and then maybe bring it forward to the county board after that, as far as some ideas of what would be in the county's purview. I guess just as a preview to that, the things that I'm aware of that you have the authority to do would be the wheelage tax, $20 per vehicle. That would generate, I think it's around $400,000 a year. The other would just be plain property tax levy increase, which obviously that's competing with everything else and not very popular. You've got borrowing or bonding to do a big project and then pay that off over time. County hasn't done that in the past, but that's certainly an option to look at. So one of the things, I guess, in my mind, I'm thinking that might be kind of one of the easiest paths to knock out some projects would be to bond for a big chunk of projects and pay that off over time with the wheelage tax. That would, essentially create a specific revenue source to pay that off and to do a slug of projects. But that's not the topic today. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, but it is with the transportation funding. I think it's something we need to be thinking about, because I do anticipate we'll fall behind and people will get increasingly frustrated about that. Moving on to the next page. One-time general fund dollars. So that the legislature did have I think it was a $17 billion surplus that they identified. They took some of that, as they referred to it, as cash. Some of that will go into local roads and bridges. And then they also had some bonding that would go into bridges. The combination of those will in part fund 6 of our bridge projects in 2024 and 25. 5 of those being on our county state aid highway and 1 small city bridge.
How about, this doesn't impact any of the township bridges? That's a separate.
So there's a slice of the pie from the highway user tax distribution fund goes to the town bridge program on a regular basis. And in probably the last 10 or 15 years, probably that's been adequate to fund that program. So that's kind of similar to our CASA funds, where it just, there's dollars that go into that pot. And so we've been able to fund those bridges through that.
And you don't feel there'll be an impact at the townships?
So we've been, I would say 17 years ago when I started with the county, we had a lot of township bridges that were in really bad shape. We've knocked most of those out.
Right.
So I think the town bridge program is in good shape, I guess, with that.
It's not being jeopardized.
It's not jeopardized by this at all. That's ongoing, established, revenue under the highway tax distribution fund. That's it's an ongoing program that's in really good shape. And I would say, I think Minnesota has a really good program in that regard. When I go,
Townships pay like 10,000.
it's a total of 20,000,
Total.
10,000 towards the engineering and 10,000 towards the construction. So, they might have a bridge that might cost $400,000, $600,000. They're on the hook for $20,000. It's a really good program to get those bridges replaced with minimal impact to their, what they levy as their road and bridge, to their township residents. By contrast, when I go to national meetings and I hear the Iowa County engineers talk about the things that they're doing to, try to take care of their local bridges, they're using railroad boxcars for frames to make highway bridges out of. They're doing innovative things like that just to keep their roads open, because they don't have funding to replace the bridges. So I think, in contrast, I think our town bridge program is, just outstanding, because it provides kind of a steady stream that seems to be able to address that need. So then our CASA bridges, generally 50% needs to come from our CASA funds and 50% can come from the the local bridge replacement program, the bridge bond funding from the state, which is kind of periodically approved by the legislature. There's not always money available there, but sometimes it's hit and miss. You have to wait a couple of years for some funding to be available, but it does come around and we're able to do that. The small city bridges and our county road bridges, for the most part, the entire bridge cost, replacement cost can use those state local bridge replacement program funds. So it's a program to get the bridges replaced. And I look at the bridges as, you can have the nicest road in the world, but if you can't safely cross the bridge, that road's useless. So you really have to have bridges that can safely take the loads that need to go across them. Bottom of page 42, fuel tax indexing. I think this is a very good thing to essentially hold we have a cents per gallon tax when you purchase gasoline or diesel fuel that goes into that highway user tax distribution fund. Generally, the legislature, might approve a certain amount of cent increase to that, and then it might be 10 or 20 years before they come back to that. And in the meantime, the inflation, erodes away the dollar value of that. So this would keep that tax essentially constant in inflation adjusted dollars, or what an economist would refer to as constant dollars or real dollars. For those who would dislike any tax increase, they'll lament that this puts a tax increase on autopilot, and they wouldn't like it. But I think from a public policy standpoint, and I think it's a really good thing long term to index that, so it essentially stays with inflation and stays constant in inflation adjusted dollars. The other thing with fuel tax is, obviously, as vehicles transition toward electric and they're not buying that fuel, it's a revenue source that's anticipated to decline over time as that evolves. And the people are looking at that nationwide, at looking at how to make adjustments and adjust things so that everybody's paying a fair share and so that we're still able to fund the roads. But so anyway, that indexing, I think, was a good thing.
Are they going to index the price that the electrical companies can charge, their rates that they can charge? Didn't you work with the public utilities at one time?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we lock that into a 3% increase? It's significantly higher.
I mean, I think Excel was asking for a 40% increase.
Yeah, huge increases. Yeah. Okay.
On the next page, 43, I highlighted the delivery fee. As I understand it, this was an item that was an idea from Representative Erin Cagle in the legislature. She has spoken at MICA engineer meetings that I've attended. A young mom that's also serving in the legislature. I think it's really, really great to see her taking an active role. From what I understand, the idea came from something that she saw taking place in Colorado, where I believe they had a $1 per delivery fee that for things like Amazon purchases, and then that went into transportation funding. So as this, went through the process, it got kind of scaled back to only deliveries over $100 and to a 50 cent per. So, and then there's a list there of the percentages of the different funds that gets apportioned out to. So that'll create some revenue. And I think my suspicion is this will be something that might get tweaked in upcoming sessions where they, change the 50 cents to some other value and, make the excluded purchases maybe some different number. I think there's some ability to tweak that now that the framework is there for that.
So if I keep my Amazon package purchases to under $100, I don't have to pay.
Yep.
So I make
Right.
smaller.
So you
I
should make
smaller orders and make them come more often.
Should
which
make
makes
an
a lot of
order
sense.
above $100 so you can fund our roads and bridges.
I'll make them, $99 and they have to come twice instead of.
But yeah, you want good roads.
Yeah.
Want somebody else to pay for it.
But it's 36% goes to the metro counties. There's a.
Yeah,
balance.
and notice I didn't highlight that because it doesn't help anybody in Winona County.
No. So don't Yeah.
The 10%
I
to
have my
the,
children have their packages delivered to my address.
and the 10% to the CASA fund is actually quite a bit lower than most of the other revenue sources, but I think there probably was a recognition that that does get funding from a lot of the other revenue sources to try to, boost especially like the small cities account.
So the
And some of the other things.
town road account, does that come to the county or is that townships, town road account?
The town road account comes to the county and then gets distributed to the townships
That is the township.
penny for penny.
Okay, all right.
It's, I want to say about $600 per mile per year. So it's not a ton of money,
Okay,
but it's money that comes to the county. There's a formula and then that gets, every penny of that gets sent out to the townships from the county. Next page, 142. Local road improvement program. The legislature approved roughly 79 million. Most of our local road agencies won't see any of this. I'll jump ahead to the next page is a piece that I put together about a year and a half ago when we were having a legislative meeting. The previous go round when they approved LRIP or local road improvement program funds. So those are, periodically the legislature will approve those. They've got statute that, provides for that. Those are distributed on a competitive grant basis. So agencies can, put in an application. In the last go around, there was I think it was a 2020 session and I think it was a fall of 2021 special session. Anyway, between those two, they approved 80.5 million of LRIP funds. $0 of that came back to Winona County local agencies in that go around. We applied, there was a couple cities applied. I've listed them in here. Some townships applied. A number of townships indicated interest in it. And then when they started looking at the application, it was too hard to figure out and they decided not to. It's too complex and they didn't do anything with it. So, there's 87 counties. So you could look at it this way. There was about $1 million out of Winona County went to the state and then it went elsewhere. None of it came back. I think it's better public policy if that money would instead be distributed in some fashion. I mean, similar to how they distributed the delivery fee, just take a certain percentage and stick it in the different pots and then that flows with virtually zero additional administrative overhead to all the agencies. In this case, you've got essentially winners and losers. It's great for the agencies that get funding, but but you've got a whole lot of resources that go into putting these applications in, and then you've got, the vast majority of agencies will end up with nothing. So I've been kind of trying to advocate so we could maybe do something different. I also want to kind of tread lightly when I do that because I, recognize you don't want to look the gift horse in the mouth when you're talking, you're advocating against transportation revenue. Anything's better than nothing, but I think there's a better way to do this. But nevertheless, they did approve roughly 79 million and, I'll probably put in an application and hope for the best. The last application I put in was our County Road 1, which is part of the Apple Blossom Scenic Byway. I thought, with that I could, try to leverage the bicycle use and the nationwide bike route aspect of that. But, it fell below the cutoff and we didn't get anything. Local bridge undesignated 67 million in bridge bond funding, so to speak. That's anytime, the discussion comes up of what do you need from the legislature, I'll almost always say, bridge bond funding. It's just an ongoing, it's not automatic. It needs to be periodically approved by the legislature, but I think it's a great program and it helps fund our bridges. They approved 67 million and that will in part fund 6 bridges that we'll do next year and the following year.
Dave, is that the same 6 bridges?
It's the same 6. Yeah, it's not 6 additional. So between the cash that they put towards the bridge program plus the bonding, which is borrowing, that'll be administered by Mark Breesy at MnDOT. And, we've had some recent plans approved and he's been going through and doing funding letters to say, okay, you've got funding available to do these bridges.
But how many bridges are you in charge of?
202.
Yeah. Okay. That's an important to keep in mind.
So,
County bridges.
you know, if you figure they last 70, 80 years, you know, I figure on an ongoing basis, we basically need to be doing 2 or 3 bridges kind of forever. As I look at our list of local bridge brim, they call it bridge replacement. Anyway, they've got, MnDOT has created in concert with the Minnesota County Engineers Association Bridge Committee, a metric that takes the condition of the bridges and ranks them and gives them a score. And then if it's over 60, you can get funding. Anyway, we've whittled down the worst of our bridges, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years, where we're getting down to, we're having that list actually of eligible bridges minimal, you know, where we're just working on eligible bridges. We're not looking at a backlog, but in any event, that I think that program is really good. The other thing I highlighted there is the local wetland replacement program. It's not flashy and exciting. So we know when they're looking at, like, let's say a bonding bill and everything's competing, you know, you might have a regional recreation center someplace, water treatment facility, bridge bond funding, local road improvement program, and then the wetland program. It just, you know, it doesn't have a huge contingency, but if that's not there, we can't do projects. So like a lot of our bridge projects, it might have a wetland, we might have a few hundred square feet of wetland impact on a bridge project. We're required by state and federal law to do, usually it's 2-to-1 replacement of that. So if we have to go out and buy that on the market of wetland credits, where somebody has recreated wetland that might have been destroyed at some point, that kind of thing, or created wetland, it's very expensive and inefficient. So this program, the Minnesota Bowser Board of Water and Soil Resources gets funding. They go out, they identify good, high quality wetland replacement projects. They, you know, develop those projects so the wetlands are, you know, credits, and then they have a bank, and then the in different watersheds, and so for eligible local road projects, the wetland impacts, when we're filling out our permitting forms, that just part of the form, it goes to them, they subtract it out, and you know, we're able to proceed. So as far as replacing wetlands for, you know, what we need to do to, you know, replace a bridge or do a road project, this is about as efficient as it can be, I would say. So that's important.
One area that you don't have anything highlighted is earmarks. Now, this is a MICA document, so it was emphasizing the counties that they represent, but was there a longer list of earmarks? Because I look at that, it's on page 140. I look at that list, and of course, there's nothing in southeast Minnesota, and Olmsted County and Winona County belong to MICA. I'm surprised Olmsted County isn't on that list either, but was there a longer list of earmarks within legislation? There must have been.
My sense in looking at this document is that there were quite a few.
But this is the MICA counties.
And right, this is a MICA document, obviously, so it's focused on MICA counties.
Yep.
To some extent, it almost seems like, you know, again, it's a kind of a winners and losers, hit and miss, you know, the counties that are, or agencies that are advocating, and a lot of those will be, you know, X dollars designated for some local road project that's not unlike many of our projects. So you know, should we be going to the legislature more with our hands out? I don't know, maybe not.
Seems like some got big hands.
Well, right. And some of those a lot of those are MnDOT projects, which is fine.
Sure.
But the ones that are, you know, a local, and in some cases, I mean, the Metro County engineers talk a lot about a lot of their, even their sales tax money, they're spending it on trunk highway projects because those are the biggest need in their county. And with MnDOT's funding availability and the system that they're responsible for, you know, they're going to do a project on I-90 to keep in Winona County to keep the pavement ride where it needs to be. If there's some congestion in the Twin Cities because the county road intersection with the freeway, you know, nobody can get through there. That's kind of more of doesn't affect the freeway directly. So there's a lot of those counties are spending their money on those types of projects. So I think in many cases, those are some of the earmarks where it might be tens of millions of dollars towards an interchange project in, you know, Chisago County or something like that. So I think that's a lot of those. The ones that are truly just a local road project, you know, unless there's something really unique about it, I don't think those should be earmarks, but it seems like there increasingly are.
You bring up something I was asked last night. What are they doing on I-90 over by St. Charles?
I was wondering the same thing.
They got barrels and then all of a
There's
sudden, there's a 3-barrel, you know, there's like a
Yeah,
gap.
the
and then-
3 barrels is, you know, when you do a lane closure, the 3 barrels is just to remind people that, you know, so somebody doesn't go on the other side and just drive down the lane, like it pushes them back out where they're supposed to be.
Okay,
But
it's a unique pattern.
I'm
barrels.
there's a lot of barrels and I'm not sure exactly what that
Okay,
project
all right.
is.
I was asked, I said, I have no idea. I saw the barrels too. Okay.
And then not related to this update, but just a reminder, we've got the Commissioner Road Tour this Thursday. We'll leave at 9 o'clock from the Highway Building in Goodview. We've got a busy day planned, so come rested. And the vehicle that we haven't done one for 4 years since 2019. So it'll be good to get out and see some stuff again. Our vehicle will be a little different than what you've seen in the past. We used to rent a van in Winona and then we were renting it from La Crosse. Neither of those are available anymore. We're instead getting a Winona Transit vehicle, like a small bus type of a vehicle. We were just touching base with them this morning. It'll be their backup vehicle, which doesn't have air conditioning, but it's only supposed to be a high of 80 on Thursday. So I think we'll live.
I want core suspension.
You want, okay.
She
Core
doesn't. I have a
suspension.
tendency to get car sick, and so no, she.
We'll
Well-
let you sit up front.
I will
Yeah,
take
you sit-
Dramamine in
sit
preparation, but-
close to the front where you can see out. That'll help.
I want them to get a true impact of the road ride.
You know what, Marcia? My husband and I did our bicycle on the Gilmore Loop the other day, and you know, we both got flats on the road.
You know how bad.
When the mini session was in town here a few years ago, the House Transportation Committee, I took them on a little bus tour, and Representative Hornstein from Minneapolis, the chair of that, he was talking about that like for months after that. But I purposely took them on our County 15 Homer Road, which was terrible at
Oh,
the
yes,
time.
that is- Yes.
Yeah, and so, you know, they got to feel it. You know, we had the motor coach, you know, with shaking like this. Like, so,
Or take them over a bridge and say, you have to get out here now. We'll drive the.
had the
bus over and then-
it had the effect.
Because
They
we're
got
wasting
to they got to feel it, and they didn't even have to drive far, you know, out of Winona to see that. So that was effective. That's all I have, unless there's more questions.
Okay.
So fair summary, there was huge increases in funding for highways, roads, bridges. But that's the good news. The bad news is it's not enough. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, to say it's not enough, I would put it in different terms to say, unfortunately, our costs increased even more than that. So so yes, not enough.
Yes.
Not enough to keep keep pace with our exorbitant cost increases that we've seen.
Yes, not the things that we can't control, the construction
Right,
costs. Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Super. Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Second item on our agenda is to discuss the potential new public safety facility. Did you have any words for us first, Administrator Holton?
So we don't have data for you today. However, Building Superintendent Aaron Liffey is gathering estimates on cost for the old section of the jail building. The intent is so that when the board discusses all of the pieces of the equation, that you are equipped with the data to make a decision about what might the county need to tax the citizens to repurpose the building or to potentially have further discussion with the city. So my intent is to give you enough data to make that decision, but we do not have it at this meeting today. I would like the board to still reinforce that you are supportive in continuing the discussions until you have the data where you can make your decision.
Commissioner Ward,
Who's determining, my interpretation of repurposing a building and somebody else's interpretation could vary greatly. So how far and to what, are we looking at minimal to, the super palace, or what are we looking at, as far, it can go the gambit. Do you put, paint and, new light fixtures, or do you start tearing out walls and redesigning? How far is Aaron going on his estimates?
So Mr. Leafy is on, he can also
Okay, I see he's
state
online.
as he is, what work he's doing. But my understanding is we're looking at the things that we already know we're going to need to address in order to use the building.
because we delayed HVAC. We had $500,000 in our budget last year for a replacement of the HVAC, and we delayed it.
The boiler, yeah.
Right, because we didn't know what,
And we already know, like, there's part of the roof that needs to be done.
okay,
There's electrical work. If, depending on what construction might be done in the building, you may have to bring things up to code, the bathrooms, the
Sprinklers?
yeah, the sprinkler system. So those are the things that Mr. Leafy is working on. Again, they're things that you need to know or may need to, and more than likely need to fix if you're going to keep the building.
And is it fair to say that no matter what happens, we're talking, unfortunately, a couple $1 million to remodel? Again, these dollars just blow me away in terms of becoming reacquainted with building costs and road costs and everything else, is that no matter what we do, if we're going to need to remodel the LAC. So no matter what we do, we're going to have to spend money.
Correct.
I've had a handful of conversations since our last county board meeting, and I guess I'm coming to the realization that we need to make this a priority, hopefully make a decision in months and not have it take years. And I'm not saying make a decision, the next meeting, but expedite it, make it a priority. And I'm not even sure where I fall in terms of the final decision, but make a decision to hopefully set it up for the next bonding session at the state legislature, because the ability of state funding to me is a huge factor. If state funding is possible, that makes many more options possible. And whenever we can, I like to view public safety and all the public service programs as part of one big problem, one solution, ways to view law enforcement, public safety as not separate from all the great things that the CJCC committee does, the great things that the RAP Plus program does. And I'd like to see, if at all possible, the county and the city working together. So look, in these conversations, I'm beginning to be swayed towards we need to do something sooner rather than later. And if at all possible, I would like to see the county and the city stay together, if at all possible. Now, in terms of is it this site ProBuild, or is it on the existing footprint? Like one example I'd be more interested in hearing. I look back through the BKV numbers. There wasn't really an example that built over the existing parking lot and expanded the building like towards the county office building. It was all moving back towards the other street, et cetera. I'd like to see that. And a short conversation with Administrator Holte was, it reminded me that I remember going back 20 years, there was two kinds of costs. There's brick and mortar costs, and then there's staffing costs. If we can work together with the city, we can hopefully have staffing savings if we could combine services in terms of training rooms, reception desks, et cetera. So that makes me much more comfortable. I'm not committing to anything, but with larger brick and mortar costs, if we can save money with staffing over time as well. So that's just me speaking as one commissioner, is I'd like to see it, if we can make it a priority. Granted, you're still doing two jobs for a while, so no, it's difficult.
Oh, yeah, they're piling up though.
I'd like to see it done sooner rather than do it, I know, in terms of months, not years. And I'd like to see us, if at all possible, stay together.
well, I want to needs, what we need and put the wants in a separate list, because I know they will cross and they will commingle and stuff. I
My,
think the issue I've heard from citizens is they don't want us to spend a lot of money on brick and mortar and such. They want effective, for better terms, programming. They don't want to see a palace. They want to see results in the
I
criminal
still,
system.
yeah, I still feel like we've made a big investment in the jail
Oh,
and
big, yeah.
I really see Health and Human Services and adequate staffing there and access for our citizens to those programs. And especially after the mental health collaborative presentation, that the lack of those services really causes us to spend money in other ways. So the only way I really see us getting involved in a bonding or is if it's somehow less money so that there is actually more funding for the priorities that I see, which is health and human services. So I still think we should keep talking to the city because of a number of the things that Commissioner Begley said, just in terms of having state money, but a lot of this idea that we're planning for 50 years into the future for adequate space for the police and underground parking and all with heating and all that sort of stuff. That's not my immediate priority. But I do think that if it can actually cost the same or free up funds for other priorities that the county is mandated to do, yeah, we still need to keep talking about it.
Yes to all those things, but I think that also if we, in the form follows function, if the design of the building would enable or allow for more collaboration between public safety and human services, et cetera. But I think we need to make it clear that the LEC needs to be remodeled and updated.
It does.
Absolutely. And we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So I think, and if we could somehow make it a regional proposal and have the county essentially, my understanding is we would fund half of a half, right? So the city and the county would go together, that possibly a half of a half might be the same thing as us going, or somewhat close to us going alone. Brick and mortar costs, then there's the staffing. One thing that Marine and I think the city and others do well and could, I'm excited to see is like, how could we share some of the basic, combined staffing services. And we also have to figure out the license center and the public health offices as well. So those are pieces of the puzzle. I've been contacted by a dozen or more people, et cetera. And I'm trying to let them know that it's not just a law enforcement center. We have other pieces of the puzzle to figure out as well.
But we share some of those services now. The city is wanting to break off and do their own thing. So the city staffing will increase because they'll have to have their own, if they build a separate building, they'll have to have their own phone system and their own staffing and everything. My goal is to have that jail empty. I don't want people in that jail. And if these and as Attorney Sonneman, they all say that you spend the dollars on programs, you save money. That's a concept that I have difficulty grasping, but I think the goal should be is to have that facility collecting cobwebs, to tell you the truth.
Or to have people there as little as necessary,
Yes.
because they've been redirected to the appropriate diversion programs that are proven.
Until we get more drug recognition experts.
I do think we have to be mindful about what the limitations are, given that it is the law enforcement center.
Absolutely.
And then not everyone would be comfortable going there
Absolutely.
to seek certain kinds of services. So I think we have to be mindful of that as a concept.
We also have to help build the bridges, what the CJCC does so well. Deacon Justin Green, he and I created a list of local clergy members, and he sent out an email to people all over the county, not just the city, about ways to perhaps more volunteers for more programs to help people while they're there and to follow up, to walk with them. But we need to, as much as when it's appropriate, and there's some places where we definitely need to keep law enforcement separate from the other programs. But one of the exciting things about what's happening is the programming space that's already built into the jail. I'm very excited to see what you all did to make that jail possible in terms of the program needs. I'd like to see more of that done as well. But is it fair to say that we'd like to make this a priority? And I mean, the city is waiting to hear from us. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
to decide one way or another. We don't need to make a decision now, like what's. what
Until
type-
the jail gets operational and everything and know how the things flow and everything, I think it's difficult to make any kind of commitment. I mean, we don't even have staffing hired,
But I,
let alone operations. in-
but I do think
Wow.
that collaboration with the city is important. And I am impressed with the work that you've done so far since you've taken the administrator position in terms of working with city staff and having those conversations and the mental health collaboratives work that has gotten done. So I surely support those continued conversations. And yes, I think we do need to decide.
Just don't nod your head yes. Just stay very, at this point, very neutral because
We're
I
just, we're
think,
gathering information,
Yeah.
like I'm Aaron Lafee. If I was him, I'd like to know, what do we want him to look, we're probably asking to look at a range of options, low end to high end. He's like,
Correct.
so like what would,
Needs and
exactly.
wants.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. I
he
agree
had-
with you.
he had a
I
t-
totally agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
he has a tough job, so we need to ask him, unfortunately, to give us a range of options. What a low end remodel would look like and depending upon how much money you want to save in the short term versus plan for the long term as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and of course, I rely on Sheriff Ganrud.
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
Who I think is grateful for everything he gets from us, but I think that the sheriff's office does have needs. And
Absolutely.
he's been holding back, letting us know what those are.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just for clarification, our intent on the August 22nd meeting is to provide the data for the estimated cost to fix the things that we know right now are going to need to be done. Okay, the repurposing or doing construction to remodel anything, that is not going to be at the next meeting.
Okay.
Because we don't know how the board may decide to use that building.
Right.
But that will be part of, hopefully we'll have the data back at August 22nd or the next meeting from the space study group.
But this-
So we're gathering data.
But the sooner we can decide, is it fair to say, there's advantages for them to know, like how much do you fix with the current versus,
Right.
it would be good for the sheriff, city police and all the construction work to know sooner rather than later, what are we going to be doing in terms of, we need to know sooner rather than later. I want the city council, the mayor and the city staff and both the county sheriff and the city police chief to know that we're very interested in at least exploring the idea of working together, if at all possible.
Well, and I think a bigger picture, a community can only support so much, tax base. County's got a big issue, city wants a big issue, the school districts all want big dollars. How much can a community support?
Absolutely.
And it's growing astronomical.
Commissioner Ward, that's exactly why I felt it was important for you to have the information about what is it going to potentially cost the county to use that building, continue to maintain that building
Mhm.
before you make a decision about what to do with the city. So that was exactly my intent.
Can I add just a
Please.
little ruffle
sure.
there? Maybe not a ruffle, but
No
Um,
ruffles allowed.
what,
No
no
ruffle?
ruffling
Small
allowed.
wrinkles.
Not
But that's
doing
what
anything.
attorneys do,
You got your
right?
courthouse. You think you're good with it.
Yeah, that's, well, and we've made good use of it and everything else. So, I just, as I'm sitting here listening, I just want, because you did hear the presentation from Colleen Engel on the RAP Plus program. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there that night and I would have wanted to throw in my 2 cents worth, which is that when you hear the budget proposals, that is one of the proposals that I have made out of my office, because my office supervises the RAP, supervises CJCC, because that's the only way we've been able to make it work. The treatment court as well. So, as Maureen has many jobs, I have many jobs too. But I think please keep in thought as you're talking about buildings and how much it's going to cost to remodel, or do we need to even use that building, that there are budget proposals coming to you that will also consider the human side, or, the employee side, that will maintain those programs that are saving money. I mean, the jail study showed that we reduced the increase of inmates at the jail. It would have been much higher if we hadn't had had programs like treatment court, if we hadn't had programs like our diversion. And as Commissioner Vagley said, you know, I think we're always going to have the need for a jail, but we want to get those people out earlier in the process. And that's what RAP program does.
Some of them, yeah.
That's what our treatment program does. It avoids them going back to jail. So always, I mean, I would just ask you, as you're thinking about this building project, also put together that with the budget proposals that are going to come to you. And in my case, funding the social worker in the jail, which is a huge part of RAP, and essentially maintaining those. I mean, you funded the jail intake worker, which is another significant part of the reentry program. You funded the treatment court coordinator, which is, again, all along, as you've heard, you know, our sequential intercept model, all along that linear look at well, not just criminal justice, but earlier intervention even before somebody's arrested with the mental health. Or responding to a mental health. And we've got a great partnership with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center where they provide that crisis intervention. They work with Ron's folks and the city as well. So there is collaboration. The city has representatives on our treatment court. At 12 o'clock today, we have our RAP task force that we meet every month, and that includes city folks as well. So we are working together with the city, but I just, as you're thinking about the building and you talk about bricks and mortar, also think about the human part of that, and that those work together. And the building's not going to be functional if we don't have people in there that are doing the job. So, thank you, sorry.
In theory, the program should come first, the building should come
Right,
second, but
right,
that's not always
right,
possible.
yeah.
It needs to be a flexible space. But yeah, the program we should build to make those programs possible, more likely to make those.
Right, and a lot of what's in the new jail will be able to
Yes.
make those programs continue, but we can't lose the people that we have through the grant funded program, because that grant is limited, so, yeah.
It's hard to keep those staff members because if it's only grant funded, it's much less stability and they're more likely to jump to places.
Right, they see the end of the grant and say,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen to my job? So,
People
yeah.
want long-term
And that's why
stability and
that's in
jobs,
the
yes.
budget request
Yep.
for 2024, so. Just getting a jump on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
already taxing the
You
people.
need your own agenda space.
What did you, I'm sorry, Commissioner Olson, what?
Placeholder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, she's kind of interfering.
Other.
Interfering.
Falls into other. We need to put that on our agenda, other.
Anything else? Okay. That was the last item on our agenda for the day. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the board meeting.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Ward has moved. Commissioner Vagley has seconded adjournment of the committee of the board. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.